Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel at Future Way Next to World and my favorite destination Canada. Today we're going to talk about breaking news. Immigration Minister plans changes to fix asylum system. We're going to talk about immigration asylum system. Immigration Minister plans reforms to asylum system to stop it being gamed right, and it's interesting because it's not just like boring policy stuff. You know, it really gets into like the nitty-gritty when you have people making really tough choices based on how the system works. It is a hot topic and a lot of moving parts. So what are your thoughts on that? Well, I think to really get we got to start with the safe third country agreement between Canada and the US. Okay, and remember that's been revised just this year, right? The agreement. So how does that actually on the ground? How does that impact somebody seeking asylum? So before the 2023 revision it only applied at official border crossings. Okay, but they added this 14-day rule. So now if someone tries to get into Canada from the US at like an unofficial spot and then they claim asylum within 2 weeks, they can get sent back to the US. So it's kind of like an incentive to stay hidden for 2 weeks, which sounds really difficult and dangerous. Exactly, and that's a huge criticism of this new revision. Immigration lawyers and refugee advocates, they're worried it's forcing asylum seekers into risky situations, maybe even having to rely on smugglers to stay hidden. It just seems like such a dilemma trying to balance, having a system that works with the very real danger that people are facing. It is so like, what's the reasoning to keep this agreement at all? Well, from Canada's point of view, it's supposed to stop asylum shopping, okay, and make sure claims are processed in the first safe country someone reaches. But in the article, Canada's Immigration Minister Mark Miller, he admits there are worries about the system being gamed. Hold on, gaming the system? What does that even mean? Like, it sounds kind of dismissive, right? And the article doesn't give any specifics, which is a problem. It's a loaded term. Gaming sounds like people are just trying to take advantage. For sure, it'd be nice to see some actual examples to know what they're talking about. So Miller knows there are concerns, yeah, but is he offering any solutions? He's being a bit vague at this point. He says he's looking at measures to deal with people that would game the agreement, okay, but no details on what those would be, right? He does say that any changes would have to be worked out with the US, but it seems like he's getting pressure from all sides. Like, what kind of pressure are we talking about? Well, internally you've got groups like the Bloc Kaka. They want to get rid of the 14-day rule completely. Their argument is it pushes people underground, right? Makes them more vulnerable, harder to keep track of. You makes sense given what we were just talking about. Exactly, but I'm assuming there are also people who want to keep the 14-day rule. Oh, for sure. The article mentions Maureen Silliv. She's an immigration lawyer, okay, and she actually thinks the rule makes asylum seekers come forward sooner to make their claims rather than trying to disappear. She thinks it makes things more transparent and accountable. Interesting. So you've got these two sides, both with valid points. So where does Miller stand on the agreement itself? He still says that overall the safe third country agreement is working fine. Okay, it's the potential for exploitation that he's focused on. So we've got this internal debate about the 14-day rule, and then the bigger question of whether the whole agreement is being taken advantage of, right? Is there any pressure coming from outside Canada too? Definitely the Canadian government under Trudeau. They're getting a lot of pressure from the US about border security. Oh really? The US has even threatened tariffs on Canadian imports. Wow, if they don't see progress on things like illegal crossings and coming across the border, that puts Canada in a tough spot. But isn't Canada's border situation totally different from what's happening on the US-Mexico border? That's exactly what Miller's saying. Okay, he's pushing back against the US, saying you can't compare the two. Okay, the Canada-US border is nothing like the US-Mexico border in terms of scale or complexity. So he's trying to make the distinction clear so Canada doesn't get lumped into a narrative that doesn't fit exactly. He even called the US debate on border security toxic. Wow, to emphasize how different the contexts are. I'm seeing how all these different threads are connecting here. You have people risking their lives to find safety. You have international agreements and domestic pressures. It's a lot, and you're trying to build a system that's both humane and functional. Absolutely, it's complicated. It's a lot to untangle for sure. It really shows how connected everything is, and it's not even just at the land borders, right? More and more people are seeking asylum at Canadian airports. Interesting, with the intention of then crossing into the US, so they're kind of using Canada as like a transit point. Yeah, it's another layer to this whole thing. It's a concern for both countries, but actually this has slowed down a bit since Canada made it harder to get a visa. Oh okay, especially for Mexicans, so they're trying to manage it from a few different angles. Yeah, okay, let's shift gears for a sec. What about the asylum process inside Canada, right? Like, what happens to those claims once someone makes them? So they go to the Immigration and Refugee Board. It's an independent group, they decide who gets refugee protection in Canada. Okay, it's a whole process. Yeah, interviews, background checks, legal representation for the asylum seeker. How long does all that usually take? Well, there's a big backlog right now. Oh no, like a huge backlog. About 260,000 claims are just waiting. 260,000. Wow, it's got to be stressful for the people waiting. It is. The wait can be years. Oh god. And the whole time they're in limbo, can't really settle in or plan for the future. That sounds really tough. Are they doing anything to deal with this backlog? Yeah, Minister Miller says it's a top priority. Okay, he's looking at different solutions, like what, maybe changing the laws, streamline things, or giving the board more resources to handle more cases, or even a fast track for cases from countries where most people are accepted anyway. So trying to make things more efficient but still fair. Exactly, it's all about finding that balance, right? Some people even say Canada should look at how other countries handle this. Oh, like what other approaches are out there? Well, some countries have this safe country of origin idea. Okay, if a claim is from a generally safe country, it gets processed faster. Okay, interesting. Others focus on early help for asylum seekers to integrate quickly and not need so much support. So there's no magic solution. Each way has pros and cons, right? And that's what makes this whole issue so complex and tricky. You agree? It's all these different factors: legal stuff, humanitarian stuff, the reality of managing a huge system. It's kind of like we've gone down this rabbit hole, you know. It's almost overwhelming to see how much is tangled up together, like people risking everything they have to get to safety, and then all these complicated international agreements and pressures at home, right? And then trying to make a system that's both humane, like you said, and actually works. You've hit the nail on the head. That's the big question, isn't it? Yeah, how do you balance compassion with practicality? Yeah, it's a global issue every country is dealing with it, and there's no simple answer. And we started this deep dive talking about the safe third country agreement, right? And this whole idea of gaming the system, but it's way more complicated than that. It's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle, and I think it's so easy to forget that we're talking about real people here. Absolutely, you know, behind all the policies and the numbers, these are individuals with hopes and fears in their own stories, real people making huge decisions. Exactly, and they're going through this really tough process, just looking for safety and a better life. So easy to get lost in the abstract stuff, I know, but at the end of the day it's about people making really hard choices. Absolutely, and their experiences should shape how we approach these issues. You know, we need to think critically about what it means to create a fair and compassionate system, one that protects people's rights while still being manageable. So thinking about everything we've discussed, what are the key things you want listeners to take away from this? Well, I think the biggest thing is understanding the pressure Canada's asylum system is under. Okay, from every direction. Internally there's this massive backlog of cases, right, and they have to be processed fairly and efficiently. Externally there's the US pushing for tighter border control, even though Canada is saying their situation is completely different from the US-Mexico border. And then there's the moral side of things, balancing practice concerns with Canada's duty to protect people seeking refuge. It's definitely a complicated balancing act. It is. With all these different priorities and pressures, it makes you wonder what's next for Canada's asylum system. You're right, it's a good question, and it leaves us with a lot to think about given the backlog, the political climate, everything happening globally. How can Canada make sure its asylum system is both effective and humane? Something I hope everyone keeps thinking about. Really important stuff. Thanks for breaking it all down with us. You're welcome. And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us with this deep dive into Canada's asylum system. It's a complex issue with no easy answers, but we hope this conversation has given you a better understanding of the challenges. That is all for today in this video. What are your thoughts on this? Please let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching the entire video. Hopefully the information is useful to you. See you later in the next video. Till then, take care and goodbye.